Hey guys, Omni here. I just got finished watching Halloween Ends, and it does indeed bring a conclusion to this trilogy. Which, if you guys hadn't seen my review for Halloween 2018 or Halloween Kills, I'll go ahead and give you guys a quick little recap. Halloween 2018, I really enjoyed. I thought it was a nice, refreshing take on the whole saga, resetting us back to that first film, taking away the connection between Laurie and Michael, and taking Michael back to just being this mysterious, unknown evil that just happened upon Haddonfield and its denizens. Aside from the twist that came in the middle second act, I thought the film was really strong. And it definitely had me extremely excited to see where things were going to go from there. And with the trailers, the hype of that first film, going into Halloween Kills, I was massively let down by the movie. I found it cartoonish, borderline on parody. It did not feel like a Halloween film to me whatsoever, and I thought it was just, the writing was abysmal. It was a joke. It was like a really extended Halloween SNL sketch. And I get it. Film is subjective, and I get that. My opinion is not going to validate or invalidate anybody else out there. This is how I feel. I'll keep it at that. I really did not enjoy the movie. I thought the only positive, literally the only positives I came out of the movie with was that I thought all of the kills were pretty solid. The gore was really well done. The action, when it was there, was the best bits, as well as just the overall production value. I thought that was really well done. That carries over here, at least, into this film. The kills, not so much, because on the kill side of thing, it does ramp things down a lot. There are no standout or memorable kills outside of maybe the first kill in the opening 5 minutes. And the production value does stay consistent. I will give it that. What I will give this film is that it feels a little bit more like it's trying to be an actual film, an actual movie with a beginning, middle, and end, unlike the previous one, where it just kind of was a bunch of noise. Honestly, I know it was a connecting thing, that this was intended to be a trilogy, but that's no excuse for a film to not have like a proper structure and a purpose. Like, Halloween Kills is a filler movie. Like, you can take it out and it changes next to nothing outside of one major death, which could have easily just happened in this movie if they wanted to. Laurie is not as sidelined as she was in the previous film, thank God, but she's still barely in the film, barely a focus, and barely even the same character that we've seen. The trajectory they shot her onto seems like there was a whole other set of movies that we didn't see. Given there is a 4-year time skip where Michael at the end of the film just kind of up and disappears, and everybody's just kind of okay with that. Yeah, it's weird. You know, Laurie was way more paranoid and like about this situation when he was locked up, but when he's alive, killed her daughter and on the loose. Totally fine. Restarted her life. This is all stuff in the trailer and the synopsis, so I'm not spoiling anything with this. She's just continuing on her life, living with her granddaughter in their own home. They just bought it, and everything's fine and dandy. Everything's just moving on. Until something more recent happens in Haddonfield that starts to take a little bit of the attention away from the Michael Myers incidents. And that's what the story really focuses on. It's not in the trailers at all. The Laurie and Michael dynamic, which was built up in the trailers and the marketing very heavily, is really only the last 15 minutes of this film. So I feel like even more than Kills, I think this is going to be way more divisive than the last one. I will say that thanks to Kills, I did go into this with abysmally low expectations. So I think that might have helped my enjoyment of this movie. While I don't think this is I don't think this is a better film than the last one, I did at least enjoy myself watching this movie a lot more than I did in the previous one. And that's usually at the film's expense. The first part of this movie is written like it was, the script was brought to us by aliens who had watched some TV of our species just kind of going off, and this is like what their interpretation of what humans sound like. Because nobody talks or acts like a rational, thinking human being until maybe the final act of the movie, and still that's kind of pushing it. There they do play with some interesting concepts in this, though those concepts contradict what they've been doing with this up until this point anyway. And they flirted with it in the previous film, though then they also backtracked from it. Again, I'm not talking about spoilers, so a lot of this isn't going to make sense until you've seen all three movies in sequence. But they flirted with an idea in the second film, drop it completely in some aspects, but then introduce a whole other thing that just kind of takes all of the realism out of this movie and kind of makes it into a Star Wars parody. And I think you'll know what I'm talking about. But this movie does not focus on Laurie or Michael. They are just kind of there while we're focusing on a brand new character, Corey Cunningham, played by Rowan Campbell, who does a good job for what he's doing. I think he's probably one of the more rounded characters in this, if you can even say it, more dynamic characters to watch in this, as we primarily are focusing on his story more than anybody else. Completely not in the marketing whatsoever. Maybe that's a spoiler, but that's made very apparent from the first opening scene of this movie who we're going to actually be following. Laurie is just kind of, again, there, but she's in more of the film. And we see her kind of flirting with her reflection on everything that had happened over the last couple of years and how her paranoia hasn't really benefited her anymore, and she's trying to take ownership of that. Allyson returns purely just to exist and tie these threads together. Other than that, she serves no narrative purpose to the story or contributes anything of worth, and her character is just continuously diminished over the last two films to where she's just kind of an object in this to be kind of scattered and carried around by the wind and the tides. She bears no weight in the actual thrust of this film. This movie's hokey. It does do some, like I said, it does do some fun things, but it doesn't explore any of those concepts further with what they do with this Corey character and his kind of journey and relationship with this town throughout the film. It's part caricature and part real kind of character study that just loses itself halfway through the film and just becomes something completely different. This movie is not about Michael. This movie doesn't really even do him any justice. If you're a fan, if you're coming into this for Michael Myers, you are probably going to leave this extremely upset or disappointed. And I'm sure there's some underlying message and all that that's just lost in the horrible script that is involved here. But I don't care. I really do. I could care less. There's an attempt to commentate on evil, infection, and how people like Michael are created. But again, they mess that up by injecting these contradictory messages throughout the movie. Just like with Kills, they muddy their own message by not really standing firm on what they're doing with the script or the story. At the end of the day, the story, this whole trilogy started off so strong and just went out in a whimper. And I gotta say, the most enjoyment, like I said, I got out of this film had nothing to do with the kills, because honestly, there's barely any in this, especially compared to the first two films. And even if that's just an exaggeration, none of them are memorable outside of the opening scene. And then on top of that, it's just kind of a departure. I think Jeremy Jahns actually said this, and I kind of see what he's getting at, even though they say this was all written over the same arc and intended to be all done together. This doesn't feel like it. This doesn't feel like a natural arc, and it feels like, exactly like Jeremy said in his review, that this is one of those situations where they have a Michael Myers ending in play, and that they had this other script that they didn't know what to do with, and they're like, how about we just combine them, because either way, on their own, aren't enough to be a whole movie. The script probably isn't enough to sell anything if it's not carrying an IP. So let's slap this together and do this Wholly other thing. Maybe this would have been stronger even if they took out all of the Michael Myers stuff and the Halloween stuff and just released this as something else. But like as a Halloween movie, it just drops the ball for me. And I'm sure there's going to be plenty of people that like it. There was plenty of people that liked Halloween Kills purely just for the kills itself, but that's never been Halloween to me. It's just the kills. Halloween has, even at its worst, had a pretty interesting story and through line. And I'll say, in retrospect, I think this makes the Thorn trilogy better. To me, man. Even six in its various cuts and versions, I think I would much rather rewatch than rewatch anything beyond Halloween 2018. If I ever watched this franchise again, I would pretty much cut it off at Halloween 2018. Like, that's where it ends. He's locked in the basement, house catches fire, he's done. That's it. That's how it ends. That's my headcanon for right now. But who knows what's going to happen next. This is a conclusion to this series. I won't say how it ends. If we get another Halloween film, which I'm sure we will, it will more than likely be a reboot. Maybe stem back for one of the previous ones and do similar to what Halloween 2018 did with Halloween. Maybe it'll branch off, continue another timeline, or it's just going to be a complete reboot. I do not think I would be surprised and shocked if we revisit this timeline ever again. But with that said, guys, I'd love to know your thoughts. If you saw it, what did you think? Sound off the comments. Let me know your thoughts down below. We'll carry on the conversation after the video. Feel free to join us in our Discord. We can talk about it there as well. Links to that in all my socials. Description box below. Follow me in each and every one of those. Before we go, I want to shout out to channel legends. Manny Sheriff, Philly Vane, Yori, Corey Scott, Margaret Grace, Melito, Robert Anguiano, Raven McCann, Status Alive, Jeffrey Hale, and M. Sephiroth. Thank you guys so much for your continued support. That's it for this video, guys, and I'll see you all in the next one. Take care, everybody.